Hello everyone, I am Amber Noor Mustafa. I am a Fulbright doctoral student in the International and Multicultural Education Program at Florida State University. And today I will be presenting a new perspective on education policy making. What do you see in this picture? Yes, you probably see one destination and many roads leading up to it. Similarly, the United Nations Girls' Education Initiative claims that girls' education is a fundamental human right underpinning all other rights and an essential element of sustainable human development. Whereas there is broad consensus on this, I argue that different policies converge differently in terms of the strategies to meet that goal. And that is how it is similar to the one destination and many roads leading up to it that you see in this picture. Now, the traditional views of efficacious education policy making are measured in terms of outcomes. Skills and knowledge are strategically acquired for high economic return on investment, assuming that greater investment in humans results in greater productivity and education is considered the tool for this. This view is problematic as it is devoid of consideration of the processes that are involved. Now, I have studied work of different authors on how this can be a contested field. But there are three more significant that I would like to quote here. This can be viewed through the research by Kisamya et al., studying the impact of educational initiatives for achieving gender parity in schools in Bangladesh and Malawi, where education was sorted as a means to achieving gender equality by increasing enrollment. But the underlying purpose of gender equality via perceivable changes in society was not achieved. In fact, education made life more difficult for educated girls as they became societal misfits and were not accepted by their own communities in most cases. Bajaj and Patmaraja reported minimum consideration for the agency of actors involved in the process in schools in India and Zambia. Girls' empowerment found a route through boys' support in this case, but not through the agenda of policymakers. Structural inequalities tend to privilege boys and enable them to experience more transformative in agency and efficacy when asserting new understandings of gender and gender relations is what they were able to find. Finally, Khurshid shows how the definitions and conceptualization of empowerment can be different for three stakeholders in a school in Pakistan, even though the outcome was empowerment of females and all three were working in the same context geographically and culturally. The new approach, on the other hand, to policy development lays emphasis on systemic review of processes involved in reaching an outcome. The premise being that such analyses open avenues for different discourses and subsequent alteration in mindsets. This paper is therefore grounded in the new approach, arguing that due significance must be given to nuances of processes of policy implementation and presentation with different actors. Moving on. For this research paper, data has been collected by a deep analysis of two policies on the implementation of sustainable development goals to increase girls' enrollment in Pakistani schools. One policy is situated in the approach of international actors. In this case, it is the Department for International Development's education policy, which has recently been merged with the Foreign and Commonwealth Office to create the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. In line with this vision, DFID initiated several projects in Pakistan, and 9 out of the 45 active projects were for education. The second one is the Pakistan implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In 2016, a National Assembly resolution adopted the Sustainable Development Goals to guide its national development agenda, asserting its commitment to 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. SDG 4 for quality education and SDG 5 for gender equality are part of the priority list, and we will be discussing them here. UK through DFID and Pakistan have a long donor recipient history, and that is why I chose to work with this organization for this presentation. UK aid was one of the first aids to be given to Pakistan after independence, and UK has boasted of its strong bilateral relationship with Pakistan and vice versa. UK was also our colonizer, and so we have a very unique relationship. So I also wanted to see if this mentality of the colonizer has changed over a period of time. So the research question in this case is, how does the approach and presentation of policies to increase girls' enrollment in schools differ for the government of Pakistan and the Department for International Development? Here are some of the similarities. First of all, both talk about sustainable development, and they are not trying to implement an initiative which is short-lived. They both recognize and acknowledge that there are barriers to education in Pakistan, some of which are school-based and others are community-centered. The approach for both is to eliminate gender disparity and promote girls' empowerment. Again, also an overarching approach is the human rights approach, that education is the right of every human being. Both policies want the economic uplift of individuals as well as the country. Both policies emphasize a data-driven approach to planning and implementation. They are inclined to work with improved and intensive monitoring and evaluation systems for the best possible results. Both stakeholders see good value in collaborating with international development organizations. Quality of education and professional development opportunities are also at the heart of what both want to achieve. How do they differ? Policy 1, which is DFID, believes in school-based transformative measures, and there is a very brief mention of contextualization in terms of the community and the society. They consider individuals as agents of change, and this is mentioned in the plan, that at the heart of everything we do are people. Gender equality is promoted by improving school enrollment. So if you have more enrollments, then it is assumed that it will result in providing equality for all genders. Then Penny Mordaunt's message in DFID's policy, who was the Secretary of State for International Development at the time, starts with the sentence, "Education has the power to change lives." A quality education, including the ability to read, write, and count, gives the child the chance to fully participate in society. So the policy has a very economic and human capital tone to it. The policy repeatedly emphasizes utilizing UK expertise and best possible advice from the UK. At times, even more than £4,000 have been allocated per day for UK educationists who were required to assist Pakistani educators to build an overarching education framework. Now, this actually ties in with the next point, as the policy also mentions that the aid strategy of strengthening UK influence and providing investment opportunities in education, including giving of loans. On the other hand, Pakistan's policy mentions changing abstract aspirations into real objectives to improve living standards of the whole society. So it has a very community based transformative approach. Then there is a mapping of the SDGs with legislation. To name a few, there is the Domestic Violence Protection and Prevention Act, which is mapped with gender equality. Then there is the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Free Compulsory Primary and Secondary Education Act 2017, mapped with the SDG about quality education. The broader economic, social, and environmental landscape are at the heart of the policy framework. The policy promotes societal gender equality to improve school enrollments and not the other way around. Then there is a mention of provision of communication platforms at all cultural, linguistic, and geographic levels to cater to the diversity at these levels. Advocacy and awareness campaigns have been mentioned, and transformative measures they believe must be taken in the larger society. There is also a mention of contextual adaptability of the curriculum, which is not present in DFID's policy. So I will now present my analysis based on these similarities and differences. The international actors' policies, economic approach divorces the discourses required around societal, political, and cultural problems, or those which can question the power hierarchies which are an integral part of international development. This approach may be considered another form of imperialism, where loans will make an already heavily indebted country further dependent on them. In the case of investments, money is rerouted to the UK through contracts with education consultants and organizations there, providing best possible advice. Additionally, Khan and Ahmad, they argue that foreign aid engenders a culture of compliance and supremacy of the donor in economic and political matters. Causal claims about how education can be a tool of social mobility are present, but no data to prove its translation in real life or an explicitly stated practical steps about how to ensure such a result of education are mentioned. The word quality is mentioned 15 times in the policy, but not explained even once. What are the implications for stakeholders? These divergent approaches for the same outcomes of external and internal policymakers can, however, create tensions, as financial support from international organizations is mostly accompanied by conditionalities, constraining recipient countries from exercising the autonomy of designing and implementing policies. As per omnipresent precedent, emphasis of the donor is mostly on targets, deadlines, and outcomes, while the recipient aspires for a long-term horizontal partnership with a transfer of knowledge and capacity building for sustainable development. Thus, this recipient-donor relationship is non-linear and sometimes yields negative results. For example, in the Pakistani province of Punjab, overemphasis on student enrollments led to the falsification of numbers by principals to escape undue wrath of authorities. Moving on. Despite these divergences and differences, the engagement of international organizations in developing countries is a reality that is not changing in the near future. So we must consider what can be done. The Paris Declaration in 2005, convened by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, laid the foundation of aid partnerships as opposed to aid relationships. It is a practical, action-oriented roadmap to improve the quality of aid and its impact on development. It gives a series of specific implementation measures and establishes a monitoring system to assess progress and ensure that donors and recipients hold each other accountable for their commitments. Most importantly, this declaration got people talking about the intricacies of these aid projects and processes. Moving forward, it is essential to identify and acknowledge the nuanced and multi layered nature of the process of shared policy making. It must be taken into account that the development of the processes should be mutually executed at all levels of planning and implementation. I conclude with what Senegal's president Abdou Daouf said in a meeting of the Association for the Development of Education in Africa in 2017. He emphasized that shared ownership of successes and failures with participatory governance through bilateral exchanges is integral to the successful utilization of international aid for education. And with this, I would like to thank all viewers and participants. I hope you found this presentation useful. And for any questions and queries, please feel free to write to me to further extend this discussion and about the processes and the route to be taken for efficacious education policy making. Thank you and stay blessed.